What's your question?
Yes, thank you for your time, Senator. How do you think this shutdown reflects on Chuck Schumer's leadership?
Well, I think it reflects more on Mike Johnson's leadership and President Trump's leadership. This is a leadership which said it's okay to give well, how do you feel? You tell me. Think it's a good idea to give $1 trillion in tax breaks to the richest people in the country and then make massive cuts to health care for working class people?
I think Chuck Schumer has voted for continuing resolutions 13 times in the last 4 years, and he has the opportunity to vote for one again, but he's refusing to come to the table.
Well, I think, look, as I have said, there are 53 Republicans in the Senate, correct?
Yes.
They need 60. What does that mean? It means you have to talk to the other side. Mike Johnson is not talking. John Thune is not talking. President Trump is not talking. That is the problem.
Well, they
Boy. So y'all to talk about the full-blown socialist meltdown that went down on CNN, okay? The Communist News Network, who hosted their comrades, Bernie Sanders and AOC, okay? Now, during this town hall, AOC and Bernie Sanders, they got confronted with some tough questions. In this video, we're going to focus more on questions surrounding the shutdown, okay, that is happening because of Democrats. If you have two brain cells to rub together, you know that the shutdown is being caused by Democrats. Again, we're going to get more into it. But the main reason why the shutdown is happening, again, is because you have Democrats trying to appeal to the far left, okay? The far left extremists want Democrats to do anything they can to stop Trump, including possibly getting shot, right? So shutting down the government, okay, according to a leftist, is not too much to ask the Democrats to do, okay? And Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries are capitulating to these demands because they're afraid, right? The leftists smell blood in the water. They're trying to primary and to get rid of Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer, who are the current leaders of the Democrat Party. And AOC is one of the candidates that is being named to go after Chuck Schumer, okay? If an election was held in New York today, I think that Chuck Schumer would get blown out by AOC. And I think that's the primary reason why you see Chuck Schumer trying to play tough, okay? The sad reality for Chuck Schumer is that I think he's cooked no matter what he does, right? But regardless, the truth being aired on CNN's network triggered AOC, obviously. Take a look.
But are you saying that Senator Schumer should not be worried about a primary challenge from you?
All right.
No.
Let me jump in on this one. This is what we're
talking about.
That's exactly what we're talking about.
This is what we're
talking about. You have a
talking
country
about.
that is falling apart. We had a housing crisis, a healthcare crisis, an education crisis, massive income and wealth inequality, a corrupt campaign finance system, and the media says, "Oh, you're going to run? What are you going to run for?" Nobody cares. So run more towards
Nobody cares. It's the House Speaker and President Trump and the Vice President saying it.
All right.
Pardon?
Well, of course, they're saying it to deflect attention away from the real issues.
Exactly.
And here, let me tell you what the real issue is. Let's see if CNN talks about it. We're living in the richest country in the history of the world, right? All right, you tell me why we're the only nation not to guarantee health care to all people, the only nation not to guarantee paid family and medical leave, why we have a $7.25 an hour minimum wage, why we have 800,000 people sleeping out on the street, why we have a president who denies the reality of climate change, why we have oligarchs on top who have more and more power every day. Let's talk about that issue, not her own political future. She'll decide that.
Yeah, so you see that, you heard that. Clearly CNN triggered a nerve there, right? Asking that question about whether or not AOC is going to primary Chuck Schumer, right? And whether or not the shutdown is about that, because it's the truth, right? That's what it's about. They know that's what it's about, okay? But AOC is not going to answer that question because she doesn't want to reveal what her plans are going to be for 2028. I think that AOC could possibly make a run at the presidency, right? At winning a Democrat primary. So with that being said, let's get into the topic of the government shutdown, because they're going to be confronted by voters over the fact that the government is shut down, and why is it that Democrats are continuing to keep the government shut down despite the fact that Republicans have a clean CR, okay? Is at the point now where, people aren't getting paid, and Democrats, their political games, they're hurting people, right? So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into this.
Senator Bobby Harms is joining us. She's a bartender from Horn Lake, Mississippi. She is a Democrat. She submitted her question via video.
A Democrat from Mississippi.
Indeed.
All right. There we go.
My American dream has turned into a nightmare.
My family was only days away from closing on a USDA loan for our dream home. Then came news of the shutdown, and now we face uncertainty. Our lease is up, and now we have to move. The shutdown is costing us our chance to live our dream. What are you doing to end this stalemate and help restore faith in our elected officials, the people I helped to choose to guard my American dream?
We're going to do everything that we can to bring an end to this terrible shutdown, which is hurting you and which is hurting 1 million federal employees and millions of people who use federal services. But also, we have got to be cognizant that if Trump wins this fight, our healthcare system could well collapse and tens of thousands of people could die every single year.
Wow. Wow. Well, you know, at least he's been so honest in regards to what this is about, right? It's about Trump not winning, right? Let's be real. It's about not letting Trump, quote unquote, win. Everything else he said was bullshit, right? And then this is the type of stuff from these socialists that I think that as Republicans, conservatives, we got to do a better job at kind of addressing some of this stuff, because Democrats pretend, or Bernie Sanders pretends as if he has the answer, right? We have the answer to the healthcare problem in this country. It's like, first of all, no, you don't. Because if you did, then what you would be talking about more so than anything is the fact that this country is obese, right? That is the number one problem with healthcare in this country, right? Our country is obese, okay? And we also have bad things in our food, right, that also are making us sicker, and we refuse to acknowledge that. RFK is trying to fix that problem, and Bernie Sanders is against that, right? So again, because of those two things alone, you know that Bernie is a fraud when it comes to this healthcare stuff, okay? Furthermore, more government is not an answer, okay? More government is not an answer. What Democrats are fighting for are subsidies for Obamacare, which was supposed to make healthcare affordable, right? But yet they added these subsidies during COVID, okay? Subsidies that we didn't need, but they added them anyways. And now they want to extend the subsidies. Now, here's the thing. If Obamacare did what it promised it would do, if it would make healthcare more affordable, why do we need the subsidies in the first place, right? Why do you need the subsidies if healthcare was made affordable by Obamacare, right? Democrats are admitting, okay, as they beg for more subsidies, that Obamacare didn't work. We need more government money, right? We need to subsidize the healthcare system even more, which is not free, by the way. And that's the thing that really bothers me about these people in their language. They claim, well, see, why don't we have free healthcare? Healthcare is not free, okay? When the government is providing healthcare for everybody, mandated healthcare, right? That's paid for by everybody. Everybody pays for it. Taxpayers pay, but that would result in a significant increase in taxes on working people, right? Working people. And when you really look into this stuff, you really start to understand just like how messed up, how much of a scam the healthcare system is. But it's not because of the things that these people claim, right? It's because the government is in on the scam. It's not because there's not enough government. It's because the government is a part of the scam, okay? Obamacare was a big redistribution plan that they forced on red states, right? They come out here and say, see, well, if these subsidies don't get extended, then red states are going to get hurt the most. Yeah, because Democrats forced Obamacare on conservatives or Republicans who didn't want it, right? We were happy. Republicans were happy. Conservatives were happy before Obamacare. But they forced Obamacare on these red states. So now they make the argument, well, see, if Republicans don't extend these subsidies, then they're hurting their voters. It's like, well, again, we're only in this situation because of Obamacare in the first place, right? Why are premiums going up every single year? Why did healthcare get more expensive if Obamacare was supposed to make healthcare affordable? But they want you to believe that throwing more money at the problem is going to make it affordable. It's not. Somebody's going to foot the bill. Somebody's going to foot the bill for these subsidies. Working people are footing the bill. That's what you don't understand. If you are working and you have private insurance, right? You're doing it the right way, okay? You get insurance through your employer. You pay your bills every single month. When you go to the doctor, you're being charged more than people who are on government health care and then don't have health care, right? Like illegal immigrants. You're going to be charged more for your services because you have insurance, right? And here's the kicker. If you don't meet your deductible, you're paying out of pocket for it anyways with higher costs because you're insured, right? Insurance only kicks in if you see the doctor, if you're sick enough, right? Up until a certain point, if you're young and you're healthy and you don't get sick, right, you might be better off just not having insurance. I'm not saying that's advice. I'm just saying based off the way the current system's set up, because of the way that we subsidize healthcare for people who don't have private insurance, it makes the people who actually have private insurance, you are paying more. You're going to pay more when you go to the doctor. You're going to pay more in general because you have insurance. You're paying for it every single month, right? You're going to pay more. And guess what? What you pay goes to subsidize other people paying less, right? So again, it's not free. It's not free. So stop calling it free. That's what really annoys me about this conversation. It's not free. Somebody's paying for it, okay? And that's the problem with these people. They don't want to tell the truth. Who's paying for this? You are paying for it. Taxpayers are paying for it. And unlike these other countries that these people keep talking about, our country's fat, right? We're fat. We're unhealthy. We also have a military that protects all these other countries with so-called free healthcare, in which they pay an exorbitant amount of taxes, by the way, right? They got to pay taxes in order to support that. But also on top of that, our military is basically their de facto military. You know, like Europe, the socialized Europe. Well, they only can get away with the socialism because they don't really have a military, right? We're their military. So again, we can have socialism. We just wouldn't have a military. And it wouldn't be free, right? We'd be paying more in taxes. So, it's just one of those things where I get very annoyed, right? The older I get, the more annoyed I get by these talking points from these leftists, because I can understand how somebody who's young, who doesn't have life experience, who actually hasn't dealt with the system can see the appeal and stuff like this. But once you start to actually peel back the onion on this healthcare conversation, you start to realize, just like every other topic, like for example, higher education, when you talk about cost, inflation, government is the problem, right? You started out, no. The problem is not enough government. It's too much government. Obamacare made healthcare more expensive for people who have private insurance because you're subsidizing everybody else. Okay, these hospitals are required by law, right? When somebody's covered by Medicaid, this is why Medicaid, again, is such a problem. When somebody's covered by Medicaid, what Medicaid pays is what the hospital has to accept. Okay, they can't go and charge more. They got to accept the Medicaid payment is payment in full, and the government pays way less, right? They're like, we're not going to pay what you're charging. We're going to pay less, and you have to take it because we're the government. So they lose money on that. They lose money on those patients. And then those patients are obese. They're more likely to be fat. So they're more likely to have more health issues, which means they're more likely to see the doctor. And every single time, the hospital loses money. And somebody with private insurance has to pay for it, right? Some working person that contributes to the system, taxpayers have to pay for it, okay? When you realize that, when you understand that you're being swindled, that the government is swindling you, right? When it comes to this healthcare conversation, when you realize that the government, they're actually the ones that's in on the scam, then you realize just how full of BS somebody like Bernie Sanders and AOC and all of these lefties are when it comes to this topic. But again, it takes people actually understanding how this works, right? That again, subsidies aren't free, that somebody's footing the bill, okay? Somebody's paying extra for people to get quote unquote free healthcare.
Do you think Trump could win this fight?
No, we're going to win it. But it's not, I don't want to look at it like a political fight. We're going to win it because the American people are on our side. If you are, or you're a Republican congresswoman, you're going to go back to your district, and people are going to say to you, why are you doubling my insurance premiums? Why did you throw me off of health care? That's a fight that Republicans are not going to win.
Well, and to Bobby's question.
Yeah, again, so the question is, right, the real question is, why do you need the subsidy in the first place? Why is Obamacare not working, right? Why has the Affordable Care Act not made my health care affordable? That's the real question here.
And Representative, earlier you said that House Speaker Mike Johnson said he wants this shutdown to be one of the longest in history. I believe he said it could be one of the longest in history. He was saying that more of a warning about how long it could go on. I don't think it was a threat. But I do think people want to know how long they should brace for this to potentially go on for. Do you think by Thanksgiving the government could still be shut down?
I mean, I would certainly hope not. I would certainly hope not. My hope is that we're able to resolve this as quickly as possible. I'm ready to negotiate. Bernie's ready to negotiate. I mean, we are all open and ready to.
Is anyone actually negotiating
this.
right now?
No,
Because
but let's
we hear from
let
Republicans
me
and
reiterate
Democrats
one
on that.
point. Republicans aren't in town. How do you
House
negotiate with
Republicans.
people who refuse even to show up to do their job? They're on
Because there's nothing to negotiate. I mean, let's be honest. What is there to negotiate? The Republicans have a clean CR to keep the government open. The same one the Democrats voted for like 4 or 5 times, right? The same exact one, Biden level spending, which I don't like, by the way, right? I'm not a fan of what Republicans are doing. But if we're going to be real about this, right? Republicans have a clean CR that Democrats have voted for before. All Democrats got to do is say, yes, let's continue funding at the same level, and we'll negotiate the Obamacare stuff later. The Obamacare stuff has nothing to do with the shutdown. The Democrats are trying to make the shutdown about the Obamacare stuff. That's their excuse to shut down the government. But those are 2 completely different and distinct issues. So there's nothing to negotiate. If anything, again, the only thing to negotiate would be, well, we need to spend less money, right? We don't need to continue Biden level spending, right? That would be a legitimate reason to shut down the government, right? Which is to say, hey, the government's spending too much money. But the Democrats actually want the government to spend more money. That's what they're fighting for right now, right? $1 trillion more in spending. That's what they're demanding.
vacation for what, a month ago?
Yes. House Republicans have been on vacation for over.
But the Republican senators are here, and House Speaker Mike Johnson, we've had him on. He said, we've done our job. We passed the clean CR in the House. It's now up to the Senate to make these negotiations.
They need to pick up a phone, Caitlin. They need to pick up a phone. They're saying that they're doing all this work. They are twiddling their thumbs and talking to each other. It is actually an unconscionable abdication and refusal to work. They refuse. I've never seen people who hate working so much in my life.
My life. Right. AOC is upset. She's upset because Republicans aren't groveling. Republicans aren't going to Democrats and saying, can you please, could you please vote to open up the government? That is what they're upset about, right? They're upset because Republicans aren't capitulating to their demands, right? That's what they're mad about. See, because Democrats are pretending as if they got the leverage because they're in the minority, right? So again, they're overplaying their hand. You don't have the leverage, okay? You are not in a position to demand anything right now, okay? You're not. You are the reason why the government's not open. You did not vote, or you're refusing to vote for the same continuing resolution that you voted for multiple times before. Again, people with common sense know this. And the longer that the government stays shut down, the more Democrats going to take the blame. Because more people are going to actually start to pay attention to the fact that Republicans almost on a daily basis are putting a vote on the floor to open back up the government, and Democrats are voting against it. At some point, you can't just gaslight the American people about who's actually keeping the government shut down, right? Because you can open up the government and talk about the healthcare stuff later. The healthcare stuff and the government being open, they're two separate things.
I mean, genuinely, they won't even pick up the phone. They won't. If I were Mike Johnson, you should be in that office negotiating with Hakeem Jeffries every damn day until we reopen this government. And any day that you don't do that is a failure. It is a failure. And until there is accountability for people who refuse to work, then we're going to continue to be in this cycle.
Wow, I wish she would apply this same logic to the people that she's promising all this free stuff to, right? When you refuse to work, right? When you refuse to be held accountable for the fact that you don't want to work, okay? Yeah, I mean, there are consequences for that, right? But, you know, hey, apparently AOC doesn't see that, okay, when it comes to her political ideology in general.
So, you know, in the Senate, the Senate Majority Leader is John Thune. He should be negotiating with Chuck Schumer. President Trump should be having congressional leaders in the White House. Do you see that every day? No, you don't, because they're playing golf and they're going to Mar-a-Lago, and the House and Republicans in the House have been on vacation for weeks now. We are here in Washington, D.C. We are ready to work. We are ready to strike a deal. We're not here to just be my way and the highway about everything. But what we're also not going to accept is the complete collapse of the American healthcare system, so that just because the Republican Party has decided to take 1 million federal workers hostage.
Can I ask?
The healthcare system is not going to collapse, right? Because of what Republicans are doing. Okay. That's not going to happen. AOC clearly is being hyperbolic, because when you don't have a strong argument, this is what you do, right? AOC, again, is mad that Republicans are not bending the knee. That's what she's upset about. She's upset because Republicans are not bending the knee. She's literally melting down CNN because Mike Johnson Republicans aren't groveling at the feet of Democrats, begging them for votes, right? That she's mad because, again, this is going to start to backfire the longer that this continues on.
Ask you on that, because you before have said a government shutdown is like hostage taking when it comes to paychecks, because you came into office actually during a government shutdown, the longest in U.S. history. So what would you say to Republicans who say you're doing the hostage taking this time?
Once again, pick up the phone. They need to pick up the phone.
Pick up the phone.
And it's not hostage taking if they refuse to clock in, right? We're all clocked in.
Well, again, the CR has been voted for. Again, this is what I'm talking about. She's coming at this from the perspective of having leverage. That's the problem. That's what you understand. That's the misunderstanding. You don't have the leverage for this, right? Republicans don't have to negotiate with you on this. Like, healthcare, Obamacare is not the same issue as keeping the government open. It's not the same thing. You're not going to mix the two issues. If Republicans did this to Democrats, they would be losing their minds. So again, Democrats are desperate for a win. This is desperation. This is them trying to show their base that, hey, we made Republicans bend the knee. See, we made them come to the table and agree with us, right? That's all this is. It's a performance. It's a show for far left extremists. That's what this is. Far left extremists are holding the country hostage right now. That's what's happening.
We're all clocked in to do the job. They're not even here. They're not even here. And so
they don't need to be. The CR is passed. It's been passed through the House. It's in the Senate. They're voting on it in the Senate. The Republicans in the Senate are there doing their jobs, voting to keep the government open. Your colleagues in the Senate are not. Again, Democrats rely on people being stupid. They rely on you being dumb. Only somebody who thinks their voters are dumb could go on national television and to pretend as if this is not all the Democrats' fault. This is insane.
It's not hostage taking as much as the fact is they refuse to show up and do the job.
Once again, the law is in the Senate. They need 60 votes. They don't have 60 votes. They've got 53 or maybe 52. That means you have to sit down and talk to the other side. It is not complicated. They are not doing that.
Yeah, but again, the problem is your issue is not on the budget, right? The appropriations bill. That's not your issue. Your issue is not with the clean CR. Your issue is with something that has nothing to do with that. Like, that's the problem. But, you know, it's just very, very, very fascinating to see how Democrats are continuing to double and triple down on this. They have their No King's Day protest coming up this weekend. We're going to see how long this lasts. I mean, it has lasted longer than I thought, right? I was wrong. I thought the Democrats would fold a lot sooner. But again, it just shows you how weak the Democrats really are at this point. How the left, the far left extremists, they have now taken control of the Democrat Party. I mean, Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffrey, they're puppets of the far left at this point, right? Because that's the only reason why this is happening. So I think that this is just another sign of just weakness from Democrats. And it's really sad to see the way that they're going out. They're literally holding the country hostage to save themselves. It really is shameful stuff. But let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.